Can you please stop bothering my kid?
Sorry.
Arthur, I have some bad news for you. This is the last time we'll be meeting.
You don't listen, do you? You just ask the same questions every week. How's your job? Are you having any negative thoughts? All I have are negative thoughts.
And finally, in a world where everyone thinks they can do my job, check out this guy.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog Podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com. Photo, video, digital media production. EliasRoushMedia.com. Today we are discussing Joker 2019, directed by Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix. 2 hours, 1 minute. This crime drama thriller is about a gritty character study of Arthur Fleck, a man discarded by society. Joker is definitely one of the more highly anticipated films of the 2019 year. Of course, this has been a jam-packed year with some of the bigger headline box office names, like the Avengers and Marvel stuff. But let's check out a little bit more of the DC side of cinema. So, Joker, this is the follow-up of the last interpretation of the Joker. Maybe wasn't so, live action was not. It was not highly regarded. It was the Jared Leto Suicide Squad Joker that most people disregard, mostly because the movie was not all that great and he didn't have all that much to do. Before then, we had one of the most notorious performances of the Joker as it was Heath Ledger as the Joker, and not only was it the writing, the direction, all I've talked about it in the Dark Knight review, just how everything on that movie hits on all cylinders and allows for Heath Ledger to have one of the best performances of the century. And so that obviously it means there is a big mountain to climb when it comes to trying to compare the Jokers. So we have the last few Jokers. Obviously, like I said, the Jared Leto one was not that great, but the one before that was Heath Ledger, and then the one before that I believe was Jack Nicholson, and obviously he's one of the best Jokers that have been on screen as well. So there's been a smorgasbord of Jokers in the past 2 to 3 decades that have had an amazing interpretation of the Joker. So this movie is the Joker, but removed from all of the other cinematic aspects of the Batman universe. So this is very much just what WB is calling it a character study. It very much feels like a character study, and you're very much just kind of entrenched in a day-to-day kind of situation with the main character, Arthur Fleck, and you're really understanding what is going on in this guy's personal life that is causing him to have some tremendous stress in his life. Now, there has been tons of, articles and different interpretations of this movie inciting incels or giving, kind of like an olive branch to some of the lowest of society, I guess is what they're trying to say. And I don't know if that's what this movie is exactly doing. Personally, before going into the review, I don't feel that this movie is sympathizing. That's what I'm looking for. They're not. You definitely feel for the main character, but I don't feel like you're supposed to sympathize with him in a way that a lot of the major news media outlets are trying to portray him as. So I just wanted to kind of get that out of the way. But from a technical standpoint and from a cinematic standpoint and from the fact that this is a $55 million movie standpoint, that it's not one of these Marvel movies that have $200 million riding behind them, that this is a modest movie that has some amazing acting, some interesting cinematic flares that really make this stand out from other quote-unquote comic book movies. I think this is one of the best looking movies of 2019. You can hang some of these frames up, just put frames of the movie, and you just put them on your wall. Joaquin Phoenix is phenomenal in it, and they give him pretty much every bit of that 2 hours and 1 minute to release his inner acting power. I mean, he's amazing. I will say the music and sound production was 99% amazing for me, except for one needle drop that I'll talk about in spoiler section. But other than that, I thought the music was amazing. Production design, the art, and the way, the mood, the cinematography, I thought it just really all worked. Now, there is a part of this movie that does kind of irk me in a way that just, I don't know, it feels quote-unquote half-baked. Now, I haven't talked to too many people that have seen this, and I haven't talked to too many people that have, seen it, liked it, loved it, hated it, excuse me, hated it, but I will say, this movie has me thinking. It has me, the wheels turning in my head to think about what did I just see? Like that, in some parts it's extremely violent, in other parts it's extremely moody, in other parts, extremely dramatic. I will say I was never, I'd say there is not a part of this movie that has an uplifting feel to it, in my opinion. I feel like this is a very dark, tonally dark movie, and there's not much levity to it. So I will say that's probably one of the dings to it. I will say that it probably could have been just it felt, the pacing in it felt slow to me. However, the pacing was slow, but toward the end it revved up so much to a point where I was like, wow, I almost want to watch more. So I guess it's not really a negative fault that I want to see more of it, but there's so much at the end that I was just like, oh shit, I want to see more of this, I'm excited. So it kind of ends somewhat abruptly in a way, but it also feels like it ends abruptly, but it also has several different endings in a way. It feels like there's numerous times it could have ended in a way. Also, the overall message of the movie, I will say, is somewhat muddled. I thought I was a little bit crazy walking out of it thinking, you know what, there was something about this movie that just feels like it's missing. It feels like you made like this amazing dessert and you forgot to put an extra egg in the batter or something like that, so it just tastes a little bit off, or if you put a little bit too much this or a little too much that. This movie feels like it's missing an ingredient to me personally, and I'm not sure if it's that through line of needing that comedic relief. Like, a movie I just saw recently was Midsummer, and it's a horror movie that takes place pretty much during the whole day, but I found myself in it a couple times chuckling. I never felt like there was almost any time in this movie. I mean, maybe one or two times I might have, like, heh. I never felt like myself laughing in a way. in comparison to the Heath Ledger performance, and I don't really remember the other two performances of the Joker, so I'm not going to really compare those. Just the way the Joker's written in The Dark Knight is so much more wittier, somewhat more charismatic. It's like even though he's terrorizing you, he's still doing these amazing quips right on the dot. I remember laughing watching Heath Ledger, even though you're terrified of him, you're still laughing. For this character, Arthur Fleck, this Joker, I definitely felt sorry for him in several scenes and in ways that I didn't feel sorry for the previous Jokers, which is definitely good. So this movie definitely made me feel something. And I remember at one point, there's a point in the middle that I felt, the heartstrings were being pulled, and I was like, oh, I'm starting to feel somewhat teary, but not like to the point where I feel like 100% like, oh, this guy, like I really feel sorry for this guy. Like I never really hit that point. Let me see what else we have. Like I said, the majority of this movie is 10 out of 10. It's just kind of with the message, kind of a little bit muddled, a little bit with the pacing, that one needle drop. That's about it. But yeah, so that is basically Joker, non-spoiled. Let's get into the spoiler section. We are in the spoiler section for the Joker. Okay, everybody now. All right. What the fuck was going on in the production studio when they decided to put that as the lead song to the final act? I thought I was gearing up to go to a goddamn football game or something like that. I was thrown out of my chair, like into the next theater. Like, what the fuck just happened? The entire movie is this slow burn character study of him doing interpretive dance at some points when he's becoming more Joker-esque. Like that's another level. I could talk about that. But there was nothing in this movie that felt like that song belonged in there. Like there was a million different songs to choose from, and that was the last one I would have chosen. That would have been the song that I left on there as a joke or in the bonus features, or I just felt like that was the last song you needed to have Arthur Fleck walk out on, because there was nothing that ever signified that was his jam, or that was, I really felt like there needed to be like a musical motif narrative through this movie. Like so much of it is reliant on this, intense sound and music that plays throughout the majority of the movie. I felt like it would have helped to counterbalance maybe with some classical music. I mean, he starts singing at the very end. I don't recall the song, but he starts singing one of the classical songs that I figured that he would have been listening to throughout the whole movie. I felt like this definitely would have benefited from having that musical motif, and in a way that would kind of give us, some montage-esque cinematic movie making in a way, so that it would kind of give us some rhythm, I guess. I felt like this movie needed a kick in the butt on the side of rhythm. I didn't feel like there was, narrative rhythm, if that makes sense. I definitely felt like maybe every 20 minutes there was like a mic drop. I mean, we find out, his mom's delusional. He's on 7 different types of meds. The State Department's closing his his meetings, so he can't see anyone to talk. His therapist anymore, his counselor. He's he's fired as a clown. He's possibly related to Thomas Wayne, which I did say earlier that this was separated from the Batman universe, which it is separated from the Batman universe, but it's not separated from the Thomas Wayne Bruce Wayne universe. So there actually is a young Bruce Wayne in this, and there's some fantastic scenes when it comes to Arthur Fleck and Bruce Wayne being in the same vicinity. Like it's intense. Like that, I really thought he was going to kill a kid at one point. And I was like, dude, this is really fucking intense. So we also find out that Zazie Beetz has not been there the whole time. I thought that her character was so underwritten for the entire movie. I was like, this is going to be the biggest niche. This is going to be the biggest ding for the movie, that they underwrote the women characters, which they sort of did, but this is underwritten so that there can be a reveal at the end. So there's that whole Thomas Murphy. It's kind of like the Jay Leno show, or it's kind of I can't remember, the Jerry something show from the King of Comedy. I tried to watch most of the King of Comedy, but I've not finished that movie yet. So I do see comparisons between the King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, all woven all up in this movie. I mean, almost multiple shots almost feel like lifted straight from those movies. In similar characteristics of the main characters also are lifted from some of those as well. Robert De Niro does an amazing job in both of those, King of Comedy and Taxi Driver, and it felt like he was Joaquin Phoenix was channeling both of those within this performance. The violence, I was told the violence is pretty extreme. It does feel slightly cartoonish at some points. There's also we don't know if he killed Zazie Beetz or not, so there's also that. So there's tons of things that I don't know. I have questions on. Hold on, I gotta get the door. Daggum, Kelly just rolling up in the middle of the stream, thinking this is some kind of free-for-all deal, Beal Steal. I wonder if she can hear me right now. She's in the other room. Anyways, we were talking about Zazie Beetz and pretty much the rest of the side cast. Let me pull them up on IMDb real quick. Okay, so we had Zazie Beetz as Sophia Drummond, and Robert De Niro as Murray Franklin, and Frances Conroy as Penny Fleck as his mother. Brett Cullen as Thomas Wayne. Shea Wiggum, completely wasted in this, as Detective Burke. Remember him from Homecoming. And Boardwalk Empire as well. Bill Camp, we remember him from HBO fame. He plays Detective Garrity. And Glenn Fletcher as Randall. And Lee Gill as Gary. Glenn Fletcher, we remember him from Barry, HBO fame, and Boardwalk Empire as well. He gets bucked up by Arthur Fleck. I will say that was probably the most cartoonish death. I will say there were deaths in what felt like homages throughout this entire movie, like the scissors in the eye remind me of the death in The Dark Knight. Let me think. I think it's with a pencil. Let me see what else. There's also frames at the very end with Joaquin Phoenix in the police car, and it very much evoked the Heath Ledger Joker as well. What else were we talking about? Robert De Niro as Murray Franklin. I thought he's used sparingly, in a way that one of the same similar characters that were in The King of Comedy. What was his name again? Jerry Lewis played Jerry Langford. And you know what? I just realized that there's a lot more similarities to The King of Comedy than I even realized. He has kind of that same fixation on the neighbor or the bartender, which is in The King of Comedy. Is they have the bartender instead of the neighbor. But anyways, back to the Joker. I will say that the unfolding of the mystery became more and more what felt like ridiculous in a way. Not in a bad way, but it did kind of feel like, you know what, your mother is crazy. By the way, I'm not your father. By the way, you're adopted. By the way, you're fired. And it was just like the way everything was kind of unraveling for this guy just felt very almost contrived in a way, not in a way that felt believable. And I don't know, mixed feelings about it. The reasoning that I'm kind of conflicted about this movie is because they have this world building of Gotham, of how dirty and how there's super rats in the city and shit like that. And it's like, it's just disgusting. And people are tired of the rich kind of controlling things, but it doesn't have a very solidified message in a way that makes sense for us as the viewer to be satisfied with. Like, I don't feel like walking out of this movie, I felt like, oh yes, that's the message, or oh yes, that's what I need to be coming away with this from. Because I do feel that even with the most art house of movies, I would say, quote unquote, or artsy fartsy kind of movies, they might, kind of get up in their own ass about, the crazy colors and, the long takes and the long monologues or something like that. But there always seems to be some sort of solidified message at the end that brings it as a cohesive narrative. And what really felt like this movie suffered from was inconsistency in the way that it didn't feel like a full, consistent narrative of what we were supposed to understand for this guy. I mean, overall, I just understood that this was a story of a crazy guy, but I didn't feel like, oh, that means we got to change the system. Like, that doesn't mean, oh, we got to, check out more mental health institutes and make sure that everything's running smoothly on that end, or that type of message. I didn't feel like there really was a message, or if there was, that it was left on the cutting room floor. And I felt like this movie didn't have the cojones to kind of lean in a left or right manner. It's not like I need a big conservative or liberal message, but I do feel like it was walking the middle so tightly that it didn't feel like they wanted to say anything about either party, or it doesn't have to be a political message, but just something about the system. And it felt like it was such a broad mishmash of ideas of, government bad, society bad, like it just felt like the, angry guy screaming in the sky. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a mixed messages for this movie, but overall great performances. Thank you for listening to the LuckyDog podcast. Check out all the other podcasts coming down the LuckyDog tube, or whatever the hell you want to call it, the library, the upload, the cloud, the whoever, the whatever. Thank you for listening. Check out all the other links below, paypal.me/LuckyDog podcast for all donations, and take it easy.
Are you having any negative thoughts? All I have.
I will say that laugh was creepy as fuck. I'm gonna be hearing it for a while. It's like, I'm not even gonna do it. I'll work on it for a while, and then I'll come back to you and make sure that it sounds all right.
You can say that again, pal.
It's so awful, isn't it?
For my whole life, I didn't know if I even really existed. But I do. And people are starting to notice.
You think this is funny? Is this a joke to you?
Murray, one small thing.
Yeah.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker? Send in the clowns.
Just some additional things that I wanted to add to the Joker review. I did want to note some of the Joaquin Phoenix performance. His physicality specifically, apparently he lost like somewhere around 40 to 50 pounds for his physical appearance. I was very impressed by just how he carried himself, not only from losing all that weight, but also he's very low muscle, very low fat, very low confidence. And so as the movie continues to progress, you can see how, I'm not exactly sure if he gets heavier, but he definitely holds himself more at an upright position, and he kind of develops this sense of confidence that increases as the movie continues. Also, the forced laughter that was a condition of his that I believe Joaquin Phoenix went and looked up the actual condition of the having forced laughter. I believe there was some sort of movie he looked up specifically that helped him find what the actual diagnosis is. Let me see if I can find the disease actually. Pathological laughter / crying, pseudobulbar effect, inappropriate involuntary laughing and crying due to a nervous system disorder. It's kind of interesting the way that they use what is called PBA in cahoots with the character of the Joker. Honestly, people with PBA probably would have some negative things to say about this character, mostly because they're going to say, if I suffered, quote unquote, if I suffered from, involuntary laughter or crying, I would not want to be perceived as being crazy. But I do want to say that the performance that Joaquin Phoenix gives with the forced laughter, forced crying. I mean, even from the first scene, it looks physically painful. His shoes at the very end of the movie, I'm going to kind of go all over the place a little bit. These were just some notes that I kind of jotted down that I forgot to mention during the actual original cast. His shoes indicate that he might have killed his counselor or therapist at the very end. I did think that the way that it was, it ended with him doing some of these motif songs, that it was artfully done, and I really liked the visuals of seeing just the blood on his shoes as he's running down the hall, or dancing down the hall, and then running away from the doctors. The Wayne family deaths. I know a lot of people are tired of seeing the Wayne family their death portrayed on screen. I know Spider-Man has a major death in his origin story that Homecoming was able to kind of dance around, and I don't really understand why they kind of didn't decide to do that. I understand it's so easy just to dip into the lore of Batman and kind of rely on it more and more as the movie goes on. The more I think about it, I have mixed feelings on the whole Thomas Wayne subplot, just as a whole. Also, I did talk about the Taxi Driver and King of Comedy similarities. I wanted to say that they straight up lift full-on plot lines and storylines from Taxi Driver and King of Comedy. And Taxi Driver, the politician, there's a politician in there, which essentially in this movie is the Thomas Wayne character. And in the King of Comedy, they have a comedian, kind of the Jerry Lewis comedian, is played by Robert De Niro in this Joker movie. So, I mean, they have straight up characters from almost other Martin Scorsese movies that are, straight up lifted out of it. And so some of the originality does feel a little bit half-assed, if you want to say it's original. I know that some people will say it's, homages or something like that, similar to what Tarantino does. But, maybe just make it a little bit different. I have a feeling they didn't show Zazie Beetz' death and possibly her kids for a reason. We're still not 100% sure what happened to her. Based on the comic books and The Killing Joke, I believe something pretty terrible happens to her. But I guess it was easy for them to just cut that out if that had happened. I do think that we'd be looking at this character differently if we had seen that he had killed a young woman and her daughter. So, also Zazie, the character, I think her name was Sophia, also didn't know Arthur's name, I believe. They're never introduced to each other, but she shows up at his door and automatically knows his name. And so I remember when I was watching that, I was like, whoa, that was weird. That was abrupt almost. But we obviously find out that this was all just an illusion or, a fantasy. The credits at the very beginning felt very classic. The way that they were showing everyone's title, the name, and all of that, except for when it came to the main title of the Joker. It's very bold and covers the entire screen. I honestly wish they would have kept the classic font looks on the main screen at the beginning. I think that it's kind of a mishmash having these kind of classical look alongside the big bold Joker logo or title, and I don't know, just mixed feelings on it. So that was a couple additional things I just wanted to talk about on the podcast that I originally didn't get to talk about the first time. So thank you for listening. Podcast, you already know, LuckyDog Podcast. Take it easy.